Hey there guys, it's Poober here for episode 18 of my Factorio series. Today is the day where we finally leave the stone furnace age behind and move on to some electric furnaces instead. So let me start by illustrating why we're going to be upgrading the furnace section today, when honestly there's a couple other projects I'd rather be doing than upgrading the furnaces at this point. But really this has been the choke point for a lot of the throughput issues I've been having recently. So this is the furnace setup that we've been using basically since episode 1 or episode 2. It really hasn't been upgraded since then, apart from a couple inserters have been replaced that were originally the yellow inserters, and now they're blue here for the iron plate smelter section. But we still have the same basic setup for the steel and the copper plate down below. Not even the inserters have been upgraded here at this point. But as you can see, it causes quite a bit of a throughput issue. We don't have good compression on our belt here, and it's even less compression when we have a lot of the iron plate getting pulled from the assembler setup that we have over here. Thankfully, this is actually as high of throughput as I've seen in quite a while for the iron plate at this point. But it gets fed down here along with the copper plate and coal into this kind of one centralized train station that we have here that delivers the plates and the coal into the trains that get into this station here. Now, one unfortunate thing about this setup is that we have only one train station for the loading of all of the plates, including copper and iron and coal. And so that means that our iron plate trains and copper plate trains have to wait, as they are right here, waiting to get into this one single train station, which means our bus over here, where our main bus is, really ends up lacking in the throughput department, as you can see from this very empty iron plate belt line that is in this section over here. Even our copper is kind of lacking, as we don't have any coming in from this train where it should be at this point. So with that said, we really have to get that upgraded in order to continue advancing with our base. So I think what we're going to be doing to fix this, instead of trying to rip it up and fit more into this very compact section that we already have kind of a mess, I want to start getting into some of my mid to late game factory furnace designs. And for that, I think I want to devote another octagon just to a smelting section. So I was thinking, we've already got this octagon rail setup already in place, and it's really nice actually, and it's good to go. But we do have the oil section for our oil farming over here, which would be in the way of the furnace section that I have in mind. So what I think I'm wanting to do instead is put the furnace section in this area over here. And what that will mean is that we have to finish putting in the railway network that will go in the kind of circular fashion in the octagon shape to connect it up with everything else. And that means even before we can fill that in, we have to kill off the biters, and I don't even have a tank yet at this point, let alone I don't even have a car. So there's a couple things I may be planning on doing off camera to try and take care of these guys, since you guys have all seen the biter nests get destroyed before. So hopefully I can be successful with this. So assuming I can get these killed off, we'll be finishing our train network, and it looks like I'm still having some biter problems even up near the copper farming area. Oh, over here rather. I'll go pay attention to that in just a second and fix that. But in the meantime, let's finish talking about the plan. So assuming I can get the biter nests killed, we'll be finishing the rail network over here. And then we're going to be putting in a massive, really cool, creative furnace setup, which I'll show you in just a couple of cuts, hopefully. And welcome back. We are now using the InfiniZoom mod to help us visualize the newly placed rail network of the octagon here to the bottom left of our main octagon over here to the top. And it took me quite some time because I did have to finally get a tank to help take out the biter nests that were kind of populated in this area over here, as well as the bottom hand section as well. But I was able to get rid of them without even dying, and then of course place down all of the rails. I do still have to place down the rail signals, which is something I'll want to do before we get trains accessing the network to prevent crashing. But with that said, that means we can finally move on to the fun part, which is actually placing down and getting the blueprint ready to go and installed. So this is something that I helped design in my creative test world. That way I could guarantee that it would fit precisely as I planned over our rail network. So we're just going to go ahead and make sure it lines up correctly by looking for the blue mark, which I think we just had. There we go. So that's now lined up, and now I have to just place it. There we go, and let's let my frames catch up a little bit now. But as you can see, it pretty much takes up the entire octagon. It is going to be a massive undertaking. I definitely don't have the electricity to support such a thing right now, but I'm going to kind of work on this in baby steps. So a little bit will go a long ways in terms of increasing my throughput. So even just having part of this functional will help me a little bit. So in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and work on this off camera as well. I'm going to let my bots help me that I have in my personal RoboPort as well. And then I'll see you guys in just a minute to explain how this all works. Well, check it out, guys. It is about as done as I can make it because I don't have beacons readily available to supply each row of factories here, but that will get added in the future. But for now, we have rows and rows and rows of electric furnaces that will be smelting iron plate over here to the left-hand side and copper plate over here to the right. And it's actually going to be done and delivered via a car. And I know that sounds a little weird, but I'm going to give credit to the person that is the designer of this whole factory, and that's actually someone by the name of Alazin. I hope I said that correctly. But he submitted a really creative factory post to Reddit a couple of months ago with this design, and I haven't changed it apart from just really minor things here and there, which I'll talk about in just a minute. But for the whole explanation of how this factory works and why and how he designed it the way he did, I would highly recommend checking out the Reddit post or his channel. The video will be at the right-hand side over here for you to click and check out. He does a better job explaining than I could possibly for this type of factory because it is even so complicated, I still don't fully understand how it works. But to kind of give a very brief overview from what I do understand, let's take a look at the size of this first of all. It's got rows and rows of basically electric furnaces just next to each other, and then we've got inserters in this weird shape that you would never imagine these inserters to be in if you were actually trying to supply products either in or out of them. But the reason why this works is that we're going to be having a car that will be basically coming down just the way I am on the belt line. It's going to be stationary but pushed along by the belt. But the car, thankfully, is kind of a weird dynamic in the game because it has a larger hitbox where when it passes along these inserters, the inserters can pick up the products from that car without ending up hitting any of the other items that are on the factory. So it's really compact in that way, so it's not going to be ending up hitting the furnaces here or the beacons once they're installed. But it also allows it so that the once completed iron plate can get delivered back into the cars as well. So if that sounds a little weird, let's turn it on so you can better visualize what I'm talking about. This is the iron plate distributor though. So once we have the iron plate getting delivered by the cars, once it's finished its rotation, it comes in through here. And this is where it drops off the iron plate. This is a very complicated iron plate unloader, which Alazin can definitely talk about in much greater detail than I can. But it does have diminishing returns in that basically if we were to add more rows, because it's supplied and going underground, it would take much longer for this train, for instance, to fill than the previous train. He did a ton of math to basically calculate exactly the correct ticks and ratios and distribution properties. I'm still missing a couple components that will be going in here because he uses tanks to help as storage partly. So I need to finish adding those in. And then eventually I'll need to upgrade the red splitters into the blue splitters because that will help with the ratios being a little bit more correct. But he's tried to time this so that they're all basically distributed evenly. So other things you might notice on the belt line, we have the belt monitoring. So we have wires connected to the belts, and that's to help hold cars here and there and give a constant tick amount so that way they're held there for a certain length of time. And it also helps to distribute the cars further apart from each other, as you'll see in just a minute. So I do have ore trains ready to go. They get dropped off here, and we have very extensive stackers on both ends. So this stacker is for iron ore trains, and the stacker just above that is for iron plate trains that are waiting to pick up the iron plate. So this will hold over 20 iron ore trains. It's going to be a 2-4-2 train, and that's actually what Eleazin uses as well, which ended up working out really nicely. But the ore gets dropped off here, gets placed into cars, and then again, because the car is actually like a 2-unit hitbox, it will be able to slide along here and pick up the iron ore, even though it looks like we shouldn't be able to grab it at this point. Lots of combinators in this build, lots of math, lots of wiring and complicated things, but let's go ahead and finally turn it on. I am so excited to do this because I've had the ore train ready to go, but haven't actually seen it in action yet. So I'm hoping all works out as planned. It would be really unfortunate to build this entire thing and have it not work. I've literally spent hours in between the last cut and now getting this ready to go and waiting patiently for things to build up that we've had available. So I do have a couple cars ready to go. All in total, this should take, I think, around 200 cars. We're going to be starting with about 25, which is, again, like I said in the previous cut, all about baby steps, so we'll build up to it. But let's grab what I can from there. And this is a very positional factory, meaning if you don't line it up just so, it's not going to work. So we're going to add the cars up here to make sure we've got it lined in correctly. If it doesn't pass through here, then I know I've lined it up incorrectly and need to start over. So I'm going to start with this. Let's see, how do I have it aligned? So I have the car facing, the back tires are facing right. So if that makes any sense. So I'm going to line it up here, basically place that there. And these things that are kind of in these intersections here of the belt line are essential. They have to be there because the cars kind of bounce off them and get positioned correctly from that. But it looks like it's working so far. It is making its way down the line. Again, it's getting controlled via 10 ticks, I believe, is how long it's staying in each position. And that's to allow even distribution of the iron plate products once it's unloaded. Eventually, let's see, I want to add in some fuel so it's not blinking at us the entire time this is running. I've done that I will do that with this car down here. It needs to happen with the tanks up here as well. But it's going to make its way down here. It's going to meet up with this car over here. One change I did make was that Eleazin uses kind of a little bit of an unloader in this section over here originally. And he does that because he takes out a little bit of iron ore initially from the cars, because if it's too full, then there's obviously nowhere for the iron plate to get inserted back into the car. So he did that to ensure that there was enough room for iron plate to go. I'm instead going to be trying it out with a different hack, and that is just putting down one of the spaces specifically saved for iron plate. So hopefully that works out. And I don't have any more fuel on me. I'm just going to put it back into this guy so it stops blinking. And the rest of this will get filled evenly, I hope, between the iron ore and the iron plate. So we're going to have to check out and see how effective that is. But let's keep on putting down a couple more cars. So So we've got 2 already. How many do I have in my inventory? 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 21. Okay, so I don't quite have 25, which would be an even eighth of how many we would need for this build. But I'll go ahead and put down all of them. And we'll make sure that they go through okay. There we go. So one thing I noticed was when I was building this initially, I left out the big electric pole here and this small electrical pole. I didn't think it was necessary. I was like, why is that there? And I realized that these cars were not making its way down this kind of runway unloader thing here. So it is an illustration of exactly how essential this is for the build. The same could be said for the beacons down here. Let's move down a little bit further so we can see. Okay, so these beacons here, I did add because they are, again, essential for creating the correct position of the cars once they bounce off of the belts and get back into the rows and rows of furnaces. So these are the only ones I really worried about having implemented in this build at this point. The rest of these will be added in later, and we'll be able to fit in our speed modules, and then the furnaces themselves, I believe, will have the production 3 modules, but that is a long way off. I believe when it's all said and done, if it's 100% up and running and we have 100% ore train delivery, basically nonstop, it should be able to smelt over 77,000 iron plates per minute in one factory here. To give you an idea of how much I'm producing right now, it is a very measly amount. Oh, looking at the wrong graph here. Basically 800 per minute of our iron plates. So we are going to be getting like 1,000 times more iron plate production than what we're currently having, which is going to be insane. So here's an example of our bots filling in a couple more things that weren't in there initially. It's probably going to still happen for a couple more times here where I pick up some supplies and realize that there's some things that weren't 100% placed. Okay, well, let's finish turning it on. I don't have fuel for the rest of the cars, but I think at this point we're just going to connect up the belt here. I don't have any more blue belts on me, but I will replace that eventually. And this is the first time I'm seeing the loading actually work. And it looks like it is working, which is awesome. He uses cars as kind of the buffer chests instead of, well, chests. And that allows, I think, a little bit more storage. I'm not 100% sure. It might also have something to do with the delivery or the hitboxes or something. Well, great. So these are getting unloaded fairly quickly. And we already have another train as a backup that will be unloading in just a minute here. So these are the first 2 that are filled, and they're going to make its way past this bank here. Let's make sure it makes it into the actual furnace arrays themselves. And it does, so you guys can kind of see it in action. So again, it's because of the fact it kind of has a 2 hitbox instead of just the 1 that you would think would only be fitting on the belt here, which allows the inserter to pick up the ore from this weird angle. And is it picking up? It is! It's picking up the iron plate! Check it out! That is so exciting. It actually works. I was pretty sure it would work because Lazen did his homework for sure when he designed this, but that was still a couple months ago. There were patches in between him posting and now. So to actually see it running is so cool. So I don't know how much production this will do with only these 21 cars running, but we'll add more cars to it and try to get closer to the 200. This might affect my frames eventually, but for now I'm still running at a good solid 60 FPS for now. Let's see how much iron plate this guy has so far. Oh, he only has 23. Ooh, that reminds me. I did forget to put the iron plate condition on the other cars. So let's just copy, paste as each one comes around. I don't want to forget that again, because that would be horrible to have like 200 of these and not know which cars had the condition, which ones didn't. But I think we're almost done, and then they should all have the condition on there properly. Okay. All of the cars should have the condition, which it looks like they do. So they only have about 42 plates at this point, but you've got to remember that once we have the speed modules and the production 3 modules in there, I imagine that the plate input at this point would be higher in the future. So I'm going to let these guys make their way through the entire factory. They are still only about maybe a quarter of the way there. They've still got all this way to kind of zigzag through finally to the end where they're going to unload over here. In the meantime, let's talk about why I specifically wanted to go for this type of smelter factory. For one, when I first saw on Reddit, I thought it was a completely creative, inventive, crazy idea. The idea to use cars as kind of a source for delivering items to and from for smelting purposes seemed really bizarre at the time, and I would never have considered that on my own. It's so inventive that I just really had to try it for myself. So not only that though, but the designer actually really did his homework, like I mentioned. Like he has some crazy math and some crazy knowledge of the advanced logistics of the game, which I don't understand, honestly. And it's just so creative for actually using this setup as a factory. So I hope it'll be worth it in the end. It should be really effective for delivering iron ore and picking up the iron plate compared to bots, because when we imagine that we can only fit, for instance, so many iron ore onto each belt tick, basically. I think it's 8 products on red, or I can't remember. Don't quote me, you guys. Don't listen to me. But there's only so many items that can fit on one space of a belt. And it changes so that the blue belts, for instance, can hold more space or more products on the same line than red and yellow. Yellow can hold the fewest items on each belt space. So the idea is that we could theoretically, in basically a 2-space line on our belt here, which is how much room the car takes, we are fitting this many, or basically this entire storage worth of iron ore. So in a 2-space amount on the belt line, we are fitting tons more ore than we possibly could on just using the belt alone, or the bots, for instance, for their storage capacity. So that's kind of where the idea works for explaining why this method is so valuable, because we're really getting tons more efficiency with getting our ore placement and ore distribution and our plate distribution with this method compared to just belts alone. So I think I've done enough rambling for now. In the meantime, I'm going to finish letting this go ahead and get to the end here, and we'll pick up where we leave off and make sure that this starts to kind of make its way through here and start to distribute evenly. And then after that, I think we'll have to call it an episode. But for now, I think we'll see you guys in just one more cut. Alright, the cars are finishing their last rotation here, and we're going to see the first cars come in with their load. I wanted to stop them here before they actually do the unloading, just to take a look and see how much plate we have. And this is only 100. and give or take a couple other stacks in some of these. But we've got to remember we didn't have full iron ore in the cars to begin with when they left, so they're only going to return with as much iron ore as they had in them, if anything. And then secondly, again, we don't have the beacons, we don't have the production modules and things like that. But it's still a good start. The theme of this episode is definitely baby steps. So where'd my belt go? Okay. We're going to connect it up and make sure that it... Oh, let's do one other thing. I made a couple other tanks. So I haven't seen the unloading process yet, so this is going to be a little finicky. Even the designer mentions that you've got to do a couple weird like placement tricks. So I will redo it as necessary, but I think a tank goes there and there. But I think all three of these inserters need to go into one tank and then these three into the other. So we'll see if they actually make it in there. I'll have to replace some things as needed. I've even got a couple more cars ready to go to add to the line. But let's reconnect this up here. Make sure it actually still works. Hey, it kind of does. This inserter is not doing anything, so we'll have to move this down or something like that. But it's getting over here. That's good. And then eventually these will get delivered into the waiting cargo trains that will be in each of these stations. We don't have any of those yet, but I can add those off camera, so that way we can start getting actual use of this factory. And it is already empty, but I imagine by the time it makes its next rotation, we'll have even more iron plate production because we'll have more access or more ore available to the cars. But we're basically back where we started. So it's made one full rotation now, and you guys saw it with me for the first time as well. I'm going to go ahead and kind of fix some of the little kinks and things like that that I'm finding. But otherwise, we're going to go ahead and end this episode here. Thanks so much for joining me for episode 18, which is a very weird but special episode. The blueprints for this will be down below, but please give your love and credit to Elazin again for this whole design of this awesome, crazy, weird factory. So I'm liking it so far, but let me know what you guys think down below as well. And in the meantime, I will see you guys later.